life.
Well, today we come to Acts chapters 3 and 4, where there is a clash of loyalties. On the one hand, you've got the disciples and their clash with the religious leaders and the decision that the disciples have to make, are we going to be loyal to God or to men? On the other hand, you have the religious leaders and their clash with the disciples and the decision the religious leaders have to make, which is, are we going to be loyal to religion or to Jesus? And you can see the clash unfolding. Now, I think for purposes of this small group lesson, I would like for us to look from the perspective of the religious leaders and the decision they had to make. You see, it all began at the temple gate when Peter and John healed a man who had been lame for 40 years since birth. And they did it in the name of Jesus, by the power of Jesus, because the same power that raised Jesus from the dead. They proclaimed his resurrection. And you can see how the clash happened with religious leaders who were the ones responsible for putting him on the cross and making sure he was put to death. That's why the clash happened. But in this text, there's just a lot of groups, religious groups. You'll read about the rulers and the elders and the teachers of the law and the captain of the temple guard and the Sadducees and the Sanhedrin. And sometimes when you read about all of that, you're kind of going, who are all of these people? And I want to try to just give a little context that could be helpful. And so first of all, whenever you read about the rulers and the elders and the teachers of the law, that is the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin was a ruling council that Rome allowed to rule over the civic affairs of the Jews. And the main reason was because the Jewish religion was complicated, and as long as they could keep the peace, that's what Rome ultimately wanted. And so the Sanhedrin was made up of 71 men, Sadducees and Pharisees. Majority of them were Sadducees. Now, of course, the Sadducees and Pharisees saw things differently. The Sadducees did not believe in angels or the resurrection. The Pharisees did. The Sadducees did not believe in oral authority. Pharisees did. Sadducees just believed in the authority of the written word. Those were some of the differences. But the Sadducees, who were the majority of the Sanhedrin, they were in charge of the operations of the temple. And so the high priest, the priest, the captain of the temple guard, they came from that ruling from the Sadducees. And so because peace was such a priority, they worked with Rome to keep turmoil and riots and disturbances from happening. So they had a temple guard. The captain of the temple guard, he was responsible for the operations of the temple. He was responsible for paying the priests, the thousands who would come to work. So he was second to the high priest. In fact, likely belonged to the royal family and was next in line to become the high priest. And so that is the religious context of what's going on. And what we have here are religious leaders who are highly religious. They are stuck in their beliefs. They are passionate about their religion. And so I think what we begin to see in this text is that religion can sometimes become the greatest barrier to receiving the truth. And that certainly is the case here. So in Acts chapter 4, verse 2, in the text we have the priests, the captain of the temple guard, and the Sadducees. They come up to Peter and John, and the text says that they are greatly disturbed. Now, why are they greatly disturbed? Because this teaching about the resurrection, this healing of this man and this miracle, it goes against their theology. It goes against their religious teachings. It goes against their understanding of religion. And sometimes our preconceived ideas can be the greatest hindrances to the truth. And here they were, the men who should understand the scriptures and should know. And never mind that all of this evidence exists that Jesus rose from the dead. They didn't want to see it. Never mind that this miracle just happened right in front of them to give evidence. They didn't want to see it because it didn't fit their understanding of the truth. See, they knew their religion better than they knew God. And that is a risk that we all run. I've seen it over and over again, where people sure have a great understanding of their religion or their denomination or their heritage or their background. They may even know the Bible pretty well. They seem to know their religion, but they don't really know Jesus. That's why some people say that children can be raised in the church, but they may not be raised in Jesus. My daughter Catherine, my oldest daughter, has been working at a Christian camp this summer. She has 12 girls with her every single week, and she's had a number of them who have decided to follow Jesus and to be baptized into Christ. She's had a significant impact in all of that. But she told me it's amazing how many of them have been raised in the church but don't know Jesus at all. The relationship is not there. And the question I really want you to wrestle with today is, are you more loyal to your religion or are you more loyal to Jesus? That's an important question. It's not uncommon to see people who do church, but they don't really do Jesus. That's why Jesus said in Matthew chapter 7 that there's many who, not everyone who calls to me Lord will enter into the kingdom of heaven, because Jesus knew there's many who are doing religious activity, but they're not in a relationship with Him. I think of the example in this text where the religious leaders put Peter and John into jail overnight because they don't want to break this little petty rule that they're not to judge a man at night. I don't think they followed it with Jesus, but now they're going to follow it with Peter and John, and they don't want to miss this petty little rule. And so they don't want to miss the rule. And yet here they are missing the most important thing. That Jesus is alive, He's raised from the dead, and there's a miracle that has happened right in front of them by that power that should give testimony that the people have seen and they believe. They're coming to faith in Jesus, but the religious leaders do not, because they're more loyal to their religion than they are to Jesus. And I think it's important that we don't confuse religious activity with a relationship with Jesus. You know, in chapter 4, Peter contrasts what the religious leaders are doing with Jesus and what God has done with Jesus. God has exalted Jesus. God has resurrected Jesus. And then he tells the religious leaders, you know what you did with Jesus? You put him to death. Now, I can only imagine this scene. Here's the religious leaders, the most prominent people in all of Jerusalem. These are the spiritual ones. And Peter's basically saying to them, hey, you missed it. You missed the Messiah. You missed the Son of God. You put him on a cross. That's how bad you missed it. I guess that maybe could explain a little bit why they're a little bit angry here. But they're so focused on their religion, they're missing the most important thing. In fact, Peter goes on to say it this way. He says, you're taking Jesus and you're saying he's a rock in this building that we don't need. We can discard it. We don't need this rock. He's like, do you realize the rock you're discarding is the capstone? It is the cornerstone from which everything else is built. It's the most important thing. Jesus is the most important one. And I think that's a pretty important message for us as well. Because I guess what I would hope that you're a little more concerned about is that you're more concerned about missing Jesus than you are about missing church. That Jesus is the most important one. Anytime there is a clash of loyalty, may Jesus be your capstone. May He be the most important one. May He be the one that you are most loyal to. May He be at the center of it all. May He be the first. Do not miss Jesus.